name's Rachel, and today we're talking about the Gloom Between Stars, which is the third book in the Night and Its Moon series. If you haven't watched the reviews of the first two books in this series, they're linked down below, but I will give you a recap in a minute if you don't want to watch the full things, or if you've already watched them. I also read the novellas, and I have not yet rated any part of this series above 2 stars as of yet, including the book that we're talking about today. This book did not need to exist on its own. What it did need was to put certain pieces of this into previous books and cut out a lot. What it really needed was another round of editing. Let me just read you, before we even start, some of the quotes so that you understand why this book, why this video is also why this book is so long. I already know it's going to be extremely long. I have 8 pages of notes and then I gave up writing because I was too tired to continue. Part of this video I'm winging it. I don't even know if I'm gonna finish filming this tonight. It's 9 o'clock. It took me an hour to put this on my face. Let me read you some of the quotes from this book that at a minimum made me go, huh? And at maximum made me sing in my voice, in my head, in the voice of Miley Cyrus. What does it mean? What does it mean? This is a large part of why I rated this 1 star. 1. Then she heard it. 10,000 angels. First kisses. Piercing rays of dawn. Tea in the morning. Promotions in rank. Taking flight. It was the deep, satisfying, shattering cry of a woman's. 2. The silver sounds of death and horror and power filled the room. 3. How much more medieval is Fairhold than Roscott? Alright, before I continue, I'm once again going to preface this by saying reviews are for readers. I make these videos for the same reason that I make all my other videos. I like to review. I like my job. I make these videos for my audience. The audience that likes how I do my job. Some watch because they want to be entertained, and some watch so that they can, use this information to inform themselves so that they can decide whether or not the book sounds like something they want to buy. And also, writers watch and like to hear from a reader and possibly implement some of the ideas that I have as a reader into their own work. That's my audience. That's who I make these videos for. Okay? Just so we're clear. I'm just doing my job. Authors do their jobs. They write. I review. And we can all get better at doing our jobs, be that writing or reviewing. Not just with taking and implementing feedback, but learning entirely new skills. And if you're looking for a place to do that, you should check out Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. They have a wide depth and breadth of topics, everything from illustration, graphic design, photography, music, marketing, and productivity, but also writers. And I recommend this not just to writers because they do have great authors on there teaching writing classes like Saba Tahir and Daniel Jose Older, so you can learn from authors that your audience might already like. But I love to recommend this to my fellow reviewers. As I said, reviewing is my job, but I can always get better and learn more about how to give good feedback on a book. Part of my job is understanding what goes into creating a written work of art and then determining whether or not that work is good. And it can actually often be hard to articulate what I like or what I don't like about a work. So Skillshare has helped me do that by watching classes for writers. I recently watched Daniel Jose Older's class on standout opening scenes and Lisa Ko's class on plotting. Both of these really helped me as a reviewer ask questions about whether or not the work did what Older and Lisa Ko suggest. Previously, I'd watched Saba Tahir's class, which she talks about making quality characters, and what I really liked about that class was that she sat down and she asked questions as the writer, and then she also acts out herself as one of her own characters answering these interview questions. And this is great for authors to learn about their own characters, but it's also helpful for me in the review process by saying, by the end of the book, do I know this character enough that I could even anticipate what their answers to certain interview questions could be? Skillshare is an on-demand platform and has stackable lessons, so members can learn at their own pace no matter your skill level. Whether you want to learn the basics of watercolor painting or how to start your own creative business, Skillshare has classes to take you from beginner to pro alongside a supportive community. For those of us in the author and reviewing community, they also have classes on freelancing and marketing, entrepreneurship, and social media. This is a community of a lot of people running small businesses, essentially. And the first 1,000 people to use my link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So if you're looking to hone your craft, whatever that is, click that link below, and thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Alright, so the Gloom Between Stars. Speaking of, my patrons requested makeup that had like stars, and I tried, but it looks like I need to use Skillshare to learn some makeup skills because I don't love this, but you know, we can all get better and hone our craft, right? I'm working on it. It's definitely better than how my makeup used to look when I first started doing this channel. Holy moly, was that something. Wow. All the previous videos about this series are linked below. Let's see how long it takes before these gems fall off my face. Yeah, I'll give you a recap in a second. I do want to say that I know I keep reading this series even though I'm still not rating any of them well, right? But this series, I've learned, has been so helpful for me to go through a book in what is not a beta read, but as if I'm beta reading it, and what kind of feedback I would get. So it's like practice for beta reading, which I do for authors, but not actually in a beta reading setting. So like if you're wondering, somebody asked me, can you do a video on like how you do beta reads? And I said, sure, I'd love to. This is kind of like that video. This is how I would go through, and this isn't feedback that I obviously am going to give the author, but like I'm showing my audience how I would beta read this, like what is going through my mind. I would eventually have to turn this into feedback for the author if I were beta reading it, and that would be, you know, it wouldn't have like jokes and me being sarcastic in it, but this is like my thought process when I am beta reading something. So hopefully this will be helpful if you want to start beta reading for authors and want to do it in like a more than just, I read this and I really liked it. If you want to give like more critical feedback, hopefully this will be helpful. And if you're an author, hopefully this will be helpful in like wondering like what questions to ask your beta readers. Okay, so there's not much to tell in the previous books because not a lot of plot relevant things happen in these books. That's one of my main issues with them. I had previously used art to show characters, but thank you to the person who let me know that I'm not supposed to use art in videos without permission from the artist. So I'm just going to use the fan casts that I knew of like when I first found out about the series, and then I'll just input people I assume are what I'm supposed to be picturing so that you can follow along with what I'm saying. I'm gonna try to do this more so that people know who's who. Okay, Nox and Amaris, our two main characters, grew up together in an orphanage. They did not have families. They get separated. Nox is sold to a brothel owner. Amaris went with a guy named Odrin to become a Reaver. Sorry. They both grow up. Nox is in love with Amaris and pines after her whole life and is always thinking of her and trying to get back to her. Amaris sometimes thinks about Nox. Nox is a succubus and kills some dudes. Amaris has the power of persuasion and to see through illusions. There's two primary countries on this continent, Fairhold and Roscott. They apparently don't intermingle. There's a religion across the continent, one that follows the All-Mother. That's it. It's the only religion. There is a temple and a tree in it, which for some reason gets called like Yggdrasil, Bodhi, and Genesis, and all kinds of shit. Amaris meets some Roscott Fae as she's out doing Witcher shit, and the Roscott Fae appear to everybody else as demons, but not to Amaris because she sees through illusions. One of them is Gadriel, the general of Roscott's army. Nox and Amaris end up at the Fairhold capital in Obaid, where the queen, Moire, and her grandson live. Amaris goes to see the queen, and because of her magic, realizes that the grandson of the queen is not there. He's an illusion and doesn't really exist. She gets arrested, thrown in jail with her two other Witcher friends, Ash and Malik. Nox gets there, castrates / succubus is the captain of the guard who is a serial killer, gets to Amaris, tells her she loves her but can't get her out of the dungeon. The back of the cell opens. Amaris has to go into this arena and fight a dragon alongside Gadriel, except they board the dragon and fly away. Nox runs off with Ash and Malik. The end. Book 2. Nox is traveling with Ash and Malik. Amaris and Gadriel end up at the university of the continent. Apparently there's only one. His wings are decimated from the dragon thing. The people there think he's a demon because of the illusion that clearly Queen Moire is the cause of because she was evil. I don't know. Amaris tells them he's not a demon, and his wings get fixed, and they flirt a lot, and they go to a tower full of magic crap that had a lot of things that just felt very much like ripped out of Harry Potter. I don't remember. Nox, Malik, and Ash go to the All-Mother's temple where Fairhold soldiers are sacking the temple and everything's on fire, but they are doing it dressed up as if they are Roscott men in order to like make it look like Roscott's terrible, which is weird because like we're told explicitly that Roscott people look desi and Fairhold seems to be white. So I don't understand how like people would not look at them and say, oh, they're definitely not from Roscott. I don't know. It didn't make sense. Anyway, they get to the temple and a priestess there tells Nox to take the apple from the tree of the All-Mother. She does, priestess dies, they get the fuck out of there, everybody dies except Nox, Ash, and Malik. She takes a bite out of the apple, she sees visions of Amaris, and it turns out that Amaris is the descendant of the All-Mother. She doesn't have a father, she was just implanted by the All-Mother into this black woman who was basically like a vessel. I think it used the word vessel, and she is a answered prayer of Nox's mother, Princess Daphne, the daughter of Queen Moirae. Nox didn't know this, but her mom was Princess Daphne, Moirae's daughter, and her dad was King Serez, king of Roscott. So she's the descendant of both thrones. Daphne hid her in an orphanage to save her from her own evil mom and evil husband, and replaced her with a little white boy. Her husband killed the little white boy and beat Daphne. She gets to the All-Mother's temple and dies. In the end, Nox and Amaris both end up in Roscott. They make out. Then this chick named Yaslin lets slip to King Serez, who's Nox's fae dad, that Amaris is there. And apparently he's been looking for her this whole time because he was told by a priestess, I think, that Amaris is like a prophecy weapon that's gonna kill Moirae and he wants her dead. And apparently he's gone insane from losing Daphne and trying to find his son because Daphne had a son. She replaced Nox with a little white boy. But he's trying to find a son that doesn't exist because his heir is actually Nox. He kills Odrin, Amaris' stand-in father, and then yoinks Amaris with him to go fuck off over to Fairhold and kill Queen Moirae. And Nox is like, wow, y'all in Roscott are annoying as fuck. End of book 2. Book 3, here we go, settle in. This is a long one. You know that saying when something is perfect, you say, no notes. This is the opposite of that. This is nothing but notes. I have 10 or so pages of notes. This is the most poorly written book in the series. It is very pointless. It is the most lacking in plot. It only has a good couple parts at the end. It has a lot of really poor prose, a lot of sentences that don't make sense, a ton of anachronisms. There's some ableism in here, and then along the way, we just have like the worst writing I've ever seen in a traditionally published adult fantasy book that had an editor. I don't really understand how this happened. All right, we open. This is the first paragraph. Obsession is a beast with two masks. Sometimes it's a thing of beauty, gilded with poetry and devotion. It's called many names, though in its cleverness, it often passes for love. Turn it over, however, and discover obsession's prickly, poisonous edges. It consumes wholly, whether worn, affection, or pain. Few perceive the subtle lines between the monster of compulsion and infatuation as love and hate blur, for they are not opposites. Toothless, benign indifference is obsession's true counterpart. Then, paragraph break, Nox knew of loathing. She was no stranger to hate. She craved indifference. She was desperate to remove the obsession's shroud and burn it in the snaps and pops of their campfire. This is how these books end up being so thick. They are written to sound pretty when it's really just purple word salad. Also, I don't recommend starting a book like this at all. And neither does Daniel Jose Older. As I mentioned that class earlier, you need a hook, not purple prose. Daniel Jose Older recommends starting a book out with actions, a lot of movement, not fighting exactly, but a lot of movement so that you're moving with the character. Instead, we had a dump of purple prose leading to a dump of Nox's feelings surrounding previous events. So this is basically just being used to tell us what happened previously, but surrounding Nox's feelings about it, and also letting us know who's sitting around her at this campfire and her feelings about all of them. It's a slog, so let's just skip this. Nox, the succubus, is pretty worn down from not doing any succubus stuff. So in the last book, she had started a bit of a romance with the Reaver Malik, who is Amaris's friend, brother, fellow Witcher guy. At this point, he leads her into a forest and he's like, I understand we can't fuck because you're a succubus. And for some reason, her succubusing only drains the life out of men and not women. I don't know. I don't know. Isn't a penis really just a big clit? So like, what's the difference? Anywho, I don't know. And I'm surprised that doesn't get like, that doesn't really get explained. And like, do trans men, would they get their life sucked out by Nox? I don't know. And the weird thing is that this not being explained is odd because other parts of this are explained in a very anachronistic way. So he tells her, okay, I know we can't fuck, but I don't take, I give. So basically he's asking if he can go down on her. And these sex scenes are not great and they're always oddly clinical. I'm always telling authors, if you're gonna write a sex scene, just use the word clit. But further, there's a lot of use of words in the sex scenes that are, as I said, anachronistic, but like weirdly scientific. Like, how would this fantasy world have already discovered endorphins? Endorphins were discovered in 1976. And then like adrenaline and oxytocin, all of these get used in the sex scenes very often, but clit never gets used. Isn't that odd? So it says, endorphins filled her from the crown of her head to the tips of her toes. Alright. Further, it says, Nox lay basking in the moonlight like one of the old gods. I'm sorry, the who? I'm 99% sure we have never heard of any old gods at any point. There is one religion across this entire world. They all worship the All-Mother, and that's it. There has never, as far as I can remember, ever been any mention of old gods. So Malik giving her head gives her like a little succubus boost. Then they go back to camp, and now Yaslin, who's in the Raskat army, is the one who told King Cerys that Amaris was there and let him know, and then he stole Amaris and killed Amaris's, Geralt stand-in. So everyone's mad at Yaslin. This will last all of 5 minutes because there's a clear list of people we're supposed to like and a list of people that we're not supposed to like. There's very little room for gray area here. But it's told us that Yaslin already has a, quote, crush on Nox, despite knowing her for a day and being hated by her, but alright. Amaris and Zakai, who's the spy master for Raskat, are with King Cerys' war camp. Amaris is a prisoner, okay? So they're over there. Nox and company are over here. Nox and company are on their way to try to save Amaris, and they keep telling Nox, hey, by the way, you're the heir to the throne, and she's like, pass. And they're discussing how Amaris is prisoner because Yaslin spilled the beans. Nox says, your goddess-damned sergeant betrayed you, and Gadriel says, it wasn't a betrayal, Nox. If anything, I was betraying Cerys by hiding Amaris so close to his home. I know you hate Yaslin, and I don't expect that to change, but Yaz is good, almost to a fault. She believes in her country and in her people. She has no ill will towards any of us, even after we made it very clear she fucked up. If she fucked up, then why would she hold ill will? She fucked up. And also, Yaslin is also the reason why Amaris' version of Geralt is dead, and why Amaris is now a prisoner to a king who you all know has lost his marbles. He continues, she's my friend and a damn good sergeant. Besides, I'm pretty sure she likes you, and for what it's worth, I know she made a spectacular partner to her last lover. Okay. Though she also makes something of a formidable enemy, so you might want to ease up on antagonizing her. First of all, is she a good friend and sergeant considering she went behind your back to the king that you knew was not well? And also, what the fuck do you mean? Isn't Nox the heir? Who fucking cares if Yaslin is a great lover and a formidable foe? I thought y'all were loyal to your rulers or some shit. Nox says that she doesn't care, and Gadriel says, I don't expect you to. That's okay, but it doesn't change who she is, nor does it change what she would do to protect you now that we know who and what you are. You just warned her that Yaslin is a formidable enemy, and now you're saying that she'll do anything to protect her? Come on. They finally get to King Cerys' war camp, and mud monsters were called up by someone and are attacking. They're called Vaklish, apparently, or something. I don't know how you say that. And they're from the desert oases of Tarkani. We don't see anybody from Tarkani ever in this book. It says, when the monster attacked, it was not with its mouth. What? Mouth. The tail had seemed to arc in such an unusual sphere. Arc in such an unusual sphere.
What does it mean?
Now, putting aside that an arc is 2-dimensional and a sphere is 3-dimensional, what the fuck is an unusual sphere? This line is really trapezoiding my rectangle. I have to issue a trigger warning for this point for you for suicide. I will put a timestamp when I'm done talking about it. I wish that the book had come with a trigger warning for suicide, but yeah, yikes. Okay, so Gadriel comes upon King Cerys, who, by the way, is his cousin, and tries to convince him, you don't have a son, you actually have a daughter, and she's here with me. And Cerys continues to not believe him. He says, Cerys continued to look off into where a sane man might have seen the fire and screams of dying men beyond the flaps of his tent. His eyes seemed to hold only memories. Okay. Moirae would rather see her daughter with a devil who looked like a typical citizen of Fairhold than with a good man who she thought looked like a demon on the outside, so she made everyone see what she saw, meaning the curse. She made all of Raskat people, if they cross the border, look like demons. And he can't convince Cerys that Cerys has a daughter. They're fighting, and it says, the inhuman wails of the monsters wove together with the sound of Cerys' fist against Gadriel's cheek, which is a really weird sentence. Nox comes upon them and sees her father and recognizes, like herself in his face, right? Recognizes that he's her father, and he sees her, and it says, as he observed Nox, he seemed to share in whatever soul-bare experience had pulled Nox from the flame-riddled pain of their present into the same sickening, unachievable, alternate reality.
What does it mean? What does it mean? What does
that is, no, oh my god, that is so unnecessary. Oh my god, just absolute word salad. One time I wanted to make my mom a birthday cake, and instead of just making my mom a birthday cake with the cake mix that was in the pantry, I decided I wanted to make her the most special birthday cake. And instead of just using the box cake that we had in the pantry, I decided I was going to throw everything we had in this pantry that I thought would be delicious into this cake. So I threw chunky peanut butter and rainbow sprinkles and chocolate chips and probably some other shit. And that cake came out and it was atrocious. I should have just stuck with the simple box cake and some frosting. That cake that I made is like that sentence. Doesn't need to be like that. Let's cut some shit out. It seems like the more large words we throw in, it would be better, but that's not actually how it works out. Instead, it's just it's too much. So he recognizes that she is his daughter immediately upon seeing her. And instead of it being written that he gets killed by a monster or protects Nox from a monster and ends up dead, it says he basically realizes that he has failed her, and immediately he switches into feeling like he is not worthy of being alive. He realizes he's failed her and says, "But I can still give you the kingdom." He met her eyes. Sarah's closed the gap then, but it wasn't the space between himself and Nox. Her scream was a sharp, dizzying intake of air. Can you scream while intaking air? I don't think you can. No. His final step was towards Gadriel. Sarys gripped the end of Gadriel's sword where the general had remained tense to defend Nox from the Mad King. Sarys pulled himself inward, sinking the sword as he guided it into the space between his ribs. Sarys still had a smile on his face as a trickle of blood dribbled from the corner of his mouth. It was clear that seeing his child was the final joy he needed in this life. I don't think this was appropriate. His journey had come to an end. As he held the blade against his body, he maintained his hold on her dark eyes as he copped up 4 final words. "You deserve the world. Now Nox is queen." The mud monsters are gone, I don't remember how, and they capture the person who called them forth, right? The next chapter starts part 2 of the book. This book is all in parts, and I actually quite like the names of the parts of the book. I thought that those were done pretty well. And of course we start part 2 with this unnecessary purple word salad. Kingdoms have collapsed from the thirst of treason as poisoned wine touched the lips of their debaucherous kings. Alright? The old gods and the All-Mother alike have fueled zealots, destroying peoples and cultures for centuries. Who the fuck are the old gods? They're discussing the Fey woman who they're holding prisoner for calling up the mud monsters. And it says, the captive responsible for summoning the mud demons was a tiny ball of hate wrapped in the bindings of the metallic rope of the rune-etched weapon. I don't understand the last part of that sentence, especially metallic rope. Just say chains. What? Nox looked at the Fae long enough to know what she wasn't. Nox had known humans and Fae from Fairhold, Roscott, and Tarkani. She'd never met anyone from the Etal Isles. As far as she knew, no one living had met anyone from Soulgrave. So how do you know she's from Soulgrave then? If no one alive has ever met anyone from Soulgrave, then how do you know that she is from Soulgrave? And this is not the last time that I'm going to ask this question. Wherever this girl was from, she wasn't welcome here. Nox's disgust toward the stranger was energy she couldn't spare, particularly as Amaris arrived. So Nox and Amaris are finally reunited after 2 books of separation with a brief makeout session at the end of the last book. And what happens? They get into a fight that isn't fully resolved until 85% of the way through the book. So she goes to Nox's room. Oh god, this is ridiculous. And it says, the heavy dark blue blankets seemed to shiver with the same meteorological light that reflected in the stone of the castle walls. Meteorological light. Oh man. And all Nox says is, "I'm glad to see you up and about," which is weird, weirdly distancing herself. So you know right off the bat that this exchange is not going to go the same route that it took last time. I'm not really sure why Nox is feeling this way when last time they made out and she was fine, but the issue she's about to have suddenly comes up. I don't understand. Amaris tries to make out, Nox pulls away, and Amaris says, "Oh goddess, I'm so sorry. I'm so goddess damn stupid. After all you've just been through with your father, your parents, the battle, the death, of course right now is not the most appropriate time. I'm such an idiot. I'm so sorry, Nox. Please forgive me. This was such inconsiderate timing. Take all the time you need." Which, yeah, Amaris is selfish as fuck. This has been established from book 1. But, she also just lost her dad to Nox's dad. And Nox says, "No, it's not that," and then proceeds to explain to Amaris that she ate this golden apple from the tree of the All-Mother, or ate a bite of it, and that it revealed to her that Amaris is not human and was born from a surrogate, a black woman, which I felt was really inappropriate, that a black woman was a surrogate for a white baby that goes on to be Jesus. It was weird. And basically she's like half goddess Jesus, right? And she's gonna save the world. That's what she was born to do. It says that Nox's voice was tired and sad, a kaleidoscope of emotions. First of all, that's a kaleidoscope is not just a mishmash of things. And second of all, kaleidoscopes were invented in 1816. So Nox explains that because they were set up like this, where Amaris is a result of Nox's mother praying for her daughter to be saved, she's not sure if what she feels for Amaris is real or if it's just a result of the, meddling of the goddess, right? Which is a cool premise. Unfortunately, we do basically nothing with this. She says, "I'm so confused it makes me sick," and Amaris dropped the apple into her lap, her hands balling into fists, her fingers blah blah blah. "You feel confused? You who has been such a constant in my entire life, even when we had crushes on boys or liked men or spent years questioning what this relationship meant to be, only to finally accept that you are my exception? I love you, Nox. You're the only woman I'll ever want. Meanwhile, if the kingdom's rumors are to be believed, you've been off fucking anyone and everything." So she slut shames Nox, even though Nox was literally sold to a brothel in Amaris's stead. Amaris is the worst person. Like, Amaris being the savior sucks because I hate her. She's awful. She's selfish and just awful. They fight, and honestly, I wish that this had just been done differently. Realizing you have built up somebody in your mind to be somebody that they're not, and then you reunite and you're like, oh, this isn't who I thought you were. That's valid, but the way that this plays out, it sucks. And the fight ends so childish. "Get out," Nox snarls. "Oh, trust me, I'm gone," says Amaris. "Don't speak to me again until you realize what a royal bitch you've been," Nox shouted, chucking the remnants of the fruit through the doorway into the empty space Amaris left behind her. So that happened. So because of this, Nox decides to hate fuck Yaslin. And I don't know about you, but I would not hate fuck a woman I felt betrayed me. Yaslin served no consequences for what she did at all, and will not. Instead, she gets basically rewarded, but it's not a reward because it's rough sex, I guess? Nox's mouth connected with the tender muscle where the neck and shoulder met, drawing a small yelp of pain. As before, each cry was immediately followed with a total body release, a rush of water. As an encouraging moan, the perfect masochistic counterpart. Nox's speed and intensity increased gradually at the soaking appreciation of each motion. Yaslin made her pleasure no secret, which was wonderful. Nox took pleasure of a different kind. She continued her pumping, clamping her left hand down on the Fae's mouth as the Fae grew louder and louder. Now that she knew how to make the sergeant scream, she was relentless. She channeled her rage, her resentment, her betrayal into every stroke. Her fury over the treacherous raven sent to the king, the violence she felt in response to the downfall of the townhouse, the heat and ferocity of every passing moment spent hating each other, channeled into stroke after stroke after stroke. I don't know about you, but I don't typically violently finger somebody when they betray me. Okay. And again, we continue with like the clinical but also anachronistic language. It says, if Nox wasn't going to get a fairy tale ending, she should at least get some drama-free oxytocin. How was oxytocin discovered in this world? We don't even have indoor plumbing. In the same chapter, perhaps she'd be clearer and sharper at the meeting thanks to her fresh dose of oxytocin. Oxytocin twice in this chapter. So they go to like a war room meeting, and Nox just feels out of place, even though she's technically the queen. She's like, I'm not qualified for this shit. And after this meeting, Gadriel's like, hey, by the way, I know you're a succubus. And she's like, what? No, I'm not. Shut up. You are. Bye. She's super uncomfortable, and it says, death. She wanted to die. Yeah, reading this made me feel that way too. Gadriel tries to dissuade her worries about him knowing that she's a succubus by saying, I shit you not. Consider this something like doctor-patient confidentiality. I'm asking as your general and as your Fae advisor. So, hold on. We don't have indoor plumbing because I definitely saw chamber pot used, right? We don't have indoor plumbing, but we have HIPAA compliance. That doesn't make any fucking sense. So she explains to him it's the oxytocin, the love chemical. And again, it's almost like drinking a tonic. I can feed fully when I take from someone. The act of taking is how I'm able to gain control, which either ends in their death or relinquishing whatever remained of their sanity, but strictly in terms of self-sustaining, I'm able to meet my nutritional needs when someone else gives as well. It's not quite the same as taking, but I've had a lot of success with it. Again, I'm not really understanding why it doesn't work if like is it working with Yaslin like all the way? I'm really not understanding. And I feel like there was a better way to do this where we're not talking about anachronistic things like oxytocin, or we don't have an explanation for how we know about oxytocin in such a world. It could just be that pleasure from any person sustains her, and that, you know, if she takes too much pleasure from it, there's a tipping point where she is, I mean, it didn't, like, it could have been explained magically. We didn't actually need the anachronistic scientific term. I just don't really understand the point, and it just throws me off as the reader, because I'm like, how did we discover this? It also, again, makes the sex scenes extremely clinical. The sex scenes in here really sort of make me uncomfortable in the same way that the ones in Corinne did. Well, not in the same way. Something about Corinne really was unsettling. But here, they just feel sort of not lived in. I'm not really sure how to articulate, because, again, smut is not really my forte, but there's something about this that doesn't feel genuine between the characters. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I wish it did, because at least we could have that, but oh man. Things I like about this are few and far in between. Amaris is talking to her fellow Reaver, Ash, and talking about her magic powers, which in the last book we found out she can, on top of having the ability to see through illusions and power of persuasion, she can emit a shockwave, which we only learned because Gadriel woke her up in the middle of the night by choking her, even though we were told at the beginning of the book that there would be consensual breath play. And the end of that scene is like, I hate you, you scared the shit out of me, you choked me. But like her inner monologue is, but I kind of liked it. I don't feel like that's consensual breath play. I think the audience should have been warned about that beforehand. But anyway, too late now. Ash says, true sight, persuasion, and shockwaves, are you a witch? And again, just like in the last two books, I'm asking, what the fuck does it mean to be a witch in this world? Not established as of now. And we are 3 books in. Well, 2 and a quarter, I guess. She goes to talk to the prisoner, the one who brought forth the mud demons. No one's had any luck talking to her, and it says, she looked back at Amaris with dark almond eyes. So saying almond eyes is a outdated way to allude in writing to someone being East Asian, Southeast Asian. And I did get sent the art of this character, and this character does seem to be this world's version of East Asian. Writers don't describe eyes as almond eyes. Like Rainbow Rowell did it, and we gave her a lot of shit for it. Rightfully so. Let's let it die with Rainbow, shall we? God, not me bringing up Rainbow Rowell twice. I think she wrote Corinne. Neither here nor there. Amaris asked the prisoner, who are you? The prisoner narrowed her eyes slightly. I'll tell you who I am if you tell me what you are, but not with the mongrel present, meaning Ash, who is only half Fae. So he leaves, and it says, leaving Amaris alone with the most dangerous Fae on the continent. I'm just not fucking sure how we got to this conclusion. Like, it's beyond me. It's established that they don't have contact with the other countries. Like, we don't talk to Tarkani, we don't talk to the Etal Isles. Nobody's seen anybody from Soulgrave. Nobody alive, apparently. How is it established that she's the most dangerous Fae on the continent? I'm really confused by that. Just because she brought forth mud demons, you have no idea what's out on the continent. You've already established that we don't know who or what is in Soulgrave. She could be the least of your worries. So to describe her as that is really weird. It would have made more sense to say the most dangerous Fae that they had ever come across. She says that her name is Tanith and says, I've held up my end of the bargain, who I am in exchange for what you are. You are neither human nor Fae. Amara says, I'll tell you everything I know about myself, and you not only tell me who you are, but why you're here and what you were doing with the Vakleesh. I guess that's the name of the mud demons. The Vakleesh, Tanith repeated, is that your word for the mud demons? Amaris nodded. And I just want to point out here that they have different words for mud demons, apparently, from Soulgrave to Roscott and Fairhold, right? But they all have the same religion and all call her the All-Mother. That just doesn't feel correct. Amaris explains who she is, and Tanith says, a demigoddess, I'm honored to be in your presence. And this feels weird because there's like a lack of continuity later on. Why, Amaris says, Tanith tilts her head, her dark shoulder-length hair cascading to the side. What pure magic exists? And later she goes on to say, I'm an agent of purity the same way you are an arm of the goddess. I honor magic and its sanctity in a way that Roscott and Fairhold have not for 1,000 years. Here it just begs the question, okay, how fucking old are the alleged old gods if 1,000 years ago they were still worshipping the All-Mother? She continues, humans have no business fighting with or under a Fae king, nor should they be intermingling and breeding with Fae lovers. universe. I have no quarrel with humans if they remain amongst their own, though other purists might prefer that the scourge be eradicated altogether. So at this point, it sounded sort of like a Voldemort thing, and Voldemort, I believe, was based upon a certain person named Hitler. So I thought that this was going the route of this is like a Nazi allegory, but then that sort of changes. Amaris asks like why she hates humans so much, and Tanith says, does a doctor hate influenza? Does a physician hate weak hearts or the fever spots that spread in close quarters? Or do the healers and medicine men identify a natural disaster and then take steps to eradicate and prevent the virus from spreading? Amaris said, humans are a virus? And Tanith says, magic is blood, demigoddess. Humans are antibodies, diluting the magic that the goddess has granted our world as they fight against it each time they breed. They are a vaccination. Antibodies and vaccination? Come on. You didn't need to use those words. Not in a fantasy that's essentially set in 1300 probably. There's a line that refers to a freshly sexed Yaslin, which, good God. So then they're in the war room again, and there's a lot of war room conversations, but when they finally start asking the questions they need to be asking, it's far too late in the book, which does not make any sense. But regardless, they're in the war room discussing the prisoner Tanith, and Zakai says, as spymaster, I can confirm that knowledge often comes at a terrible price. I'm an advocate for intelligence, but to what end? Do you want to get it out of her and then carry out an execution? And Nox is like, no, I want to turn her. And I'm like, but you don't really have a good understanding of what her beliefs are, where she comes from, how many of them are there? It just really doesn't make sense that at this point they're considering turning her. The only reason that this is happening, it feels like to me, is to tell the audience how they're supposed to feel about Tanith early on, because she's going to get a redemption story. And much like how it didn't really make sense how Yaslin got forgiven so quickly, it doesn't really make sense what we would do with Tanith either. As I said, there's like a list of people that we're supposed to like and a list of people that we're not supposed to like, and the way we get to liking these people does not make sense when they fucked up so terribly, and other people do the same shit and they end up still being hated, or you're supposed to hate them. And I'm like, is it just because like one side is like hot and the other is like old and gross? Like, I'm just confused about why we're doing this. Why are we not actually cultivating like a character arc that makes sense, a redemption arc that makes sense, that really deals with the nitty gritty of what it means to have a redemption arc, if redemption is even possible? So Amaris and Yaslin go back to talk to Tanith, and at this point I still think Tanith is like an allegory for a Nazi, and we don't use fiction to humanize Nazis. I mean, in reality, we don't humanize Nazis. Amaris asks, what do you know about Soulgrave? And she says, no one knows anything. And like, how do you know she's from Soulgrave? If no one knows anything, how do you know where this woman is from? Why not say, I've never seen anyone who looks like her before, I wonder if she is from Soulgrave? Tanith is not really, like, we don't really find anything substantial out about Tanith. We're given very little bits and pieces, and this is because Tanith's whole story has to be in the next book, and I guess the idea was that we're gonna do all of that packed into the next book, but what we should have done was combine books 1 and 2, cut out all the shit that we didn't need to have, and then combine books 3 and 4 and have this secondary arc where Soulgrave is the problem in the second part and Queen Moirae is the problem in the first part. Or another option. Either way, the way that this story is mapped out does not work. Okay, I'm gonna be super honest. I'm really anxious. I'm not having a great night. Carlos is on another work trip, and my OCD is really bad right now, and I'm just not feeling it. So I'm gonna quit filming now. It's now 11 o'clock at night because I had to take a break to deal with some shit that I fucked up. So I'm gonna take a break, and I'll come back to filming this tomorrow. I'm also out of official notes. Like, all I have is highlighted shit, and underneath it all it just says what the fuck, what, this doesn't make sense, oh my god, no. So I'm gonna try again tomorrow. Hi. So, you know the phrase literally can't even? That's me right now. I am doing pretty shitty in the mental health department, which happens whenever Carlos goes on a work trip. I just get really anxious. I've been tapping. My OCD's oh my god, my OCD's so bad. Yeah, I try not to tap. I tap stairs, particularly when I'm going upstairs. And I try not to do it when anybody's looking. And I didn't know my neighbor's kid was outside. And he goes, "What are you doing to the stairs?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that's mortifying." So it's pretty bad. This is like half the amount of makeup I normally wear. And obviously this is my natural hair. So this is what we're doing now, okay? This is what we're doing now. So we're just gonna dive back into this book and we're gonna ignore that I'm a human disaster. Where were we? So we're at 35%, and I looked at the footage from last night and that was an hour, so that's gonna be fun to edit. This is a fun video, isn't it? Okay, damn, I really should have filmed this before Carlos left, shouldn't I? Yeah, okay. All right, so we're in chapter 15 and Amaris and Yaslin are going to talk to Tanith. Speaking of Tanith, I don't remember how much I said last night, but I did find the official art that was commissioned for this character, and this character looks exactly like all of the art for Amren from ACOTAR, and apparently the fans agree. So I don't want to use any art that I don't have permission to use, so I know that this woman is the typical fan cast for who people want, the ACOTAR fans, who they want to play Amren. And since this character seems to be modeled after Amren like to a T, and the fans of this series are seeing that, I'm gonna use this woman's pictures as Amren since I don't want to use any art that I don't have permission to use. So this is Amren Tanith, okay? Okay, Yaslin and Amaris are going to talk to Amren in the dungeon, okay? Oh, my hair's already driving me nuts. By the way, y'all like my shirt? It says queers take care of each other. I got it in the Target Pride section, or as the conservatives call it, the indoctrination section. So they're going to talk to Tanith. It says the two had spent very little time together, which Yaslin expected. Yeah, no shit, you're the reason her dad got murdered. She knew everyone in the castle blamed her for the horrors that had occurred in the wake of her well-intentioned letter to the king. This is weirdly written. It feels like it's almost trying to make the audience like assuage the guilt of Yaslin. Yaslin is responsible. She's not just blamed, she is responsible for that. It doesn't matter if her letter was well-intentioned. She fucked up. And now Amaris, her dad is dead. And if they hadn't have left Gwydir, then maybe the mud monsters wouldn't have attacked and killed the majority of Roscott's army. So yeah, Yaslin is responsible for that. But there's no accountability. There's no accountability for any character that we're supposed to like, because accountability is uncomfortable. So we're not going to have accountability for Yaslin. We're not going to have accountability for Tanith, which is ridiculous. So Zakai had sent them to go talk to Tanith because he decided that a pure-blooded fae and a demigoddess would be their best bet at getting Tanith to talk, because a male presence might negatively affect Tanith's willingness to share, which I'm not sure why. Is that a religious thing? Like, I wish that we would have expanded upon that. They go talk to Tanith and Amaris acknowledges Tanith, and Tanith's like, "I'm your prisoner. Does my comfort concern you?" But of course it does, because Amaris is like the hero. So they try to like be nicer to Tanith. They offer her books. They offer her a blanket. So Tanith asks, "What do you know of Soulgrave?" And Yaslin said, "No one knows anything. The frozen straits make it impossible to access." And Tanith says, "Impossible?" And they talk about that story about Ophir, the last Fae princess of Fairhold, which is the white people who died on the straits. And Tanith is being like, sort of like cryptic. Is like, "A flicker of a smile tugged on Tanith's otherwise expressionless features. I'd like to hear your ghost story." This was like the part of the book where I'm like, oh, I'm actually interested in Tanith as a character. Unfortunately, the way that Tanith is now completely stops. Like, there's no intrigue. There's just, we need to be nice to her so we can turn her. And I'm like, wait, but why? So it talks about how Princess Ophir was on the ambassador mission or something of the like. I guess I don't know the details, but the story tells us that she heard something on the ice. She had fire power. She walked out into the dark. They saw her fire in the distance and was never seen again. Without her flame to warm them, most of her men died. The ones that survived were half mad, and her death meant the end of the Fae dynasty in the south. So now the humans are in charge in the south. I wish that this stuff had been introduced in book one. This was stuff that we should have been told in book one, because because not only is it interesting, it would have lent itself to us having a better understanding of the world we were in earlier on, and I wouldn't have had so many fucking questions for 3 books. It says, Yaslin opened her mouth, but then didn't say anything. The legends that emerged from Soulgrave were a mixture of fact and fiction. How did they emerge? I thought you just said that no one knows anything about Soulgrave. While some claimed that the Fae beyond the Straits were the size of giants and had the powers of gods, others insisted they were more beautiful than angels and had the wings of the seraphim. Some said that Soulgrave was the kingdom of the All-Mother, where no illness or enemy dare penetrate their borders, while some were relatively easily to discern as fairy tales. Okay, how is it the kingdom of the All-Mother when the temple of the All-Mother was in, I think, Fairhold, which is all the way south, and that's where the tree was? I'm very confused. Like, the tree was the only tree, right? I don't know. And they said this Soulgrave Fae had, after all, displayed unheard of power. Amara said, how did you cross the straits? Tanith said, with the gift of fire. Did you come alone? No. 5 of us crossed on a ship that has carried many before and will carry many after. Who sent you? I was not sent, I was called. So this is the part of the book where I got really interested. However, it still lends itself to some questions because a lot of this contradicts what we know about the All-Mother from the first 2 books. Who called you? What do you believe in, demigoddess? So she's not answering the question and instead asks Amaris what she believes in. You are a child of the All-Mother. Do you visit the goddess in her temples? How do you worship? What do you mean temples? I thought that there was only that one temple and it got burned along with the tree that created the only apple that Nox then bit of and had all those visions from the All-Mother. Amaris says, I'm not religious. Tanith says, you're not the first child to scorn their parent. And Yaslin says, are you implying that this massacre was a religious issue? Tanith said, I've honored the All-Mother for my entire life. We are fortunate to live among the goddess made flesh in Soulgrave, and Amaris, you would be most welcome in our lands. The most tangible way to express reverence is to unify the people with magical perfection. I honor the unadulterated magic of the goddess. That is how I worship the All-Mother. And it's at this point that we should start having a conversation about how this religion deviated into so many different factions despite worshiping the same god. So like we understand how that happened in our world with Christians separating into so many sects, not just, you know, Catholicism and Protestantism, but all of these different sects of Protestantism that can be traced back. We understand that, we have an understanding of that in our world. So it makes sense when you ask somebody, are you a Christian? Oh, how did you grow up? I grew up AOG, Assemblies of God. Other people grew up Southern Baptist. Other people grew up, I don't know, Episcopalian, and on, right? And Amaris asks her, can you clarify what you mean by the goddess made flesh? And Tanith says, the speaker, of course. What can you tell me about the speaker? She is the All-Mother. This is very important. Amaris now has this information, and later on, this information is asked about by somebody, and Amaris had it, but does not talk about it, even though the person asking the question, she could just answer the question. We'll get there. What is your end game? My heart echoes the heart of the All-Mother. I desire unity. And how is unity achieved? Occasionally, viruses are killed with quarantines. Some bacteria are expunged only through thorough cleansing. There are many ways to deal with a blight, and each doctor is only responsible for the tasks within their power. And Yaslin thinks to herself that this is like disgusting genocidal ideologies is what it says. Amaris gets sick of this and leaves. Yaslin stays, but then after dinner, Yaslin says, can I talk to you? And Amaris says the emotional toll of being around her betrayer, the pretty, stupid, irreverent Fae warming Nox's bed, had worn heavily on her. Which is fair, and I'm not sure why everybody else is not being like, hey, Yaslin, you're the reason that Amaris Amaris's dad is dead, you should probably make some amends. And also, like, you're gonna have to build back trust. But no, we're just immediately supposed to root for Yaslin and Amaris. We're just not gonna deal with anything. I spoke to Tanith for a while longer and she genuinely doesn't act hostile. She seems so perfunctory. She has the conviction of a healer helping the continent. And Amaris is like, yeah, she's used that metaphor a time or two. Yeah, in a very anachronistic way. And Yaslin says, she seems like a fanatic who's never known any better. And at this point I was like, oh no, no, let's not go this route. Come on, just because she doesn't know any better. She does know better. We had an interesting idea and we're already, instead of working with that interesting idea, working with the lore behind those interesting ideas, we are immediately bypassing accountability and working through how those ideas came to be and what their implications are for the rest of the the world, and skipping straight to let's stand Tanith, so let's like bypass accountability and bypass all the lore. It says she seems like a fanatic who's never known any better. It's almost as if she thinks we'll see her point of view and join her cause. She just seems, and Amara says, like she's never been outside of her echo chamber. And Yazel's like, yeah, I'm finding it hard to be angry with her. She did more to us in a night than Saris did in 20 years. But I don't know. She doesn't feel violent. She seems pitiful. I don't know anything of her religion, but it seems like she's had no exposure to humans or failings. Oh. Okay. First of all, I don't even know where to begin. I have so many questions about how this doesn't make any sense. Like, these are not normal, balanced reactions to the things that, like, you agree that Saris did a lot of damage. What is that damage? How is that damage affecting the common people? By the way, we never find out. What? I don't understand. And how are you finding it hard to be angry with her? She left you with barely any army. It's like the characters are being used to try to make us feel a certain way about Tanith rather than actually doing the work that needs to be done with Tanith to redeem what the awful thing that she was done. Why? Okay. When it comes to Tanith, we don't have any reason to believe she's had any exposure to the world outside her cult. I don't know anything about her religion, but it seems like she's had no exposure to humans or failings. Okay, just because she's, first of all, this is not what we do. This is not what we do when we leave. If this is supposed to be an allegory for not being a Nazi, but being a former fundamentalist, so like I held really harmful beliefs. I had like a lot of internalized homophobia, all kinds of other things, and I have had to do the work to undo those teachings, but also like take accountability for the harm I caused, because I caused a lot of harm. Like, it sucks that I grew up in that, but after a while it was still a choice. Like, I still had a choice and I still chose that. And so when I decided to no longer be a part of it, I did need to take accountability for what I did. Like, it's not just as easy as like, oh, people feel sorry for me and being around them, you know, made me a different person. That's not it. And that's not what happened. Like, that's not, I hate this. Tanith was a waste. This was a waste. And they say if anybody has a hope of getting across to her, it's a demigoddess. And Yaslin says, you don't have to accept my apology. You don't have to forgive me or even be my friend. I just want you to know that not only am I sorry, but no one will hate me as much as I hate me. This is the first time that Yaslin has ever had any sort of self-loathing. Before this, we were told by Gadriel, she's such a good friend and such a good sergeant and she's a great lover. And then she gets to fuck Nox. And before that, she was like, it's my well-intentioned letter to the king. This is the first time that you are saying sorry. So like, shouldn't we been building to this? Anyway, they're in the war room and Nox is like, I just want Gadriel to be king. And it says he assured the room that he'd rather set himself on fire than be a king. And Nox says, because being a monarch is a fate worse than burning to death. And it says Gadriel had said something about trying to be assuring and everyone told him that he should stick to strategy and leave psychology for the others. Alexa, when was psychology discovered? What, coined?
From Wikipedia.org, psychology as a field of experimental study began in 1854 in Leipzig, Germany, when Gustav Fechner created the first theory of how judgments about sensory experiences are made and how to experiment on them.
Yeah, so the sun rose, the sun set, the days wore on. They learned a little more from Tanith each day. What did they learn? I kind of need to know that as the reader. But that's basically the end of Tanith being like cryptic and like sort of like letting you know that there's like this entire threat in Soulgrave that has its own really interesting history that is now gone at 37%. Now we're just gonna do the exposure therapy, quote, and redemption, even though she never actually says sorry. Tanith was a fucking waste. Nox and Yaslin have this like really weird sex scene where Nox is like, I'm drinking in this room, you can get what you need and go. And Yaslin's like, you don't own the castle. She does. She's the queen. And Nox is like, I do actually. And it says, have you always been this arrogant or does the monarchy just look cold on you? And then Yaslin goes down on her after they kiss and it says, their tongues taste of hate, cinnamon, cruelty, blackberries, passion, walnuts, and urgency.
What does it mean?
come on. Yaslin goes down on her. Nox tells her to shut the fuck up. Nox says, you know, I'm not sure if I love or loathe walnuts and blackberries. And Yaslin says, good, I hope you never taste blackberry jam without getting wet. Personally, when I taste blackberry jam, I don't get wet, but I've never fucked Yaslin. What a shame. This is the worst quote in this book, honestly. This is the most ridiculous thing. She's going down on her. It says, all's fair in sex and war. That's not the quote. Nox gets an orgasm, but it says, then she heard it. 10,000 angels. First kisses. Piercing rays of dawn. Tea in the morning. Promotions in rank. Taking flight. It was the deep, satisfying, shattering cry of a woman's orgasm.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
I don't know about you, but I don't know how you hear promotions in rank or tea in the morning. And I don't think that either of those things sound like when a woman has an orgasm. I don't understand how this was left in the final copy of the book. This is so fucking silly. Come on. Nox props herself up as Yaslin wiped the glistening remnants from her chin. It doesn't say remnants of what, it just says remnants. And I'm like, well, first of all, I hate that we called it remnants. And second of all, never mind, I just hate it. And she looks at Nox and she's like, oh, I shouldn't have looked at her. This was a mistake. Because I guess it's like when you make eye contact with an alpha dog or something. It says the moment her guard was fully down, she saw her mistake. Nox popped off the table, grabbed her shawl, and headed for the door. And she's like, I'm selfish, remember? And Yaslin calls her a stone cold bitch. And Nox says, that's queen bitch to you. No, the only bitch queen is from The Wolf of Warren Yarrow, which is the superior adult fantasy book. I'm just saying. All right. Talks a lot about what food they're eating. It just like goes through seasons. It passes time really quickly and you have no idea what's going on. And apparently they're not having very necessary conversations about like, how do we rebuild our army? What if Fairhold decides to attack? They're not having those conversations. They're just, I don't know, fucking and eating almond scones and drinking hot chocolate. So, okay. Green summer leaves relinquished their colors into oranges, then reds, then browns. The days grew shorter and the nights fell colder. And it says that they trained and Gadriel spent time in the war room, but whatever conversations Gadriel was having in the war room, we're not privy to. And apparently they weren't very helpful because they don't make a plan until months after they've already been attacked by Soulgrave. And they were already told by Tanith 5 other people are on the continent and they're not like, should we send out a party and look for them? Should we send out some ravens? Should we try to find out where they are? Should we try to get Tanith to tell us where they are? None of that. That doesn't make any sense. You have intel, you have information and you're doing nothing with it. What are you doing in the war room? Playing checkers? Because we all know you're not playing chess. All it says is stuff like, it was unwise to head south of the border without any true plan of action, especially with their shredded forces. From their reports, it seemed the Southern Queen knew nothing of the massacre in the gully, nor how it had decimated Roscott's military. What report? And if you're getting reports on Moire, then how are you not getting reports? How are you not getting reports on the other 5 Soulgrave Fae? Also, why? I don't get it. They used her ignorance to their advantage to continue planning, training, recruiting, and growing their whatever strength they could. But apparently that amounts to all of nothing, and we never see that. So I just feel like this was like, this doesn't, like, it's like paying lip service to like filling in some gaps, but not really filling them in a way that feels genuine. They moved Tanith to a castle room, and it says, while her religious zeal was unmoving, Tanith had been consistently willing to relinquish knowledge and data as long as no one of mixed magical heritage was in her presence. What that data is, it is not given to the reader. And also, why did they never ask her where the other 5 people, or where the other 4 people are? I don't know. Yaslin is talking to Tanith and it says, you're lucky I still talk to you considering how you sully yourself with a halfling. And Amaris is outside the door listening, and basically Yaslin is just like, why doesn't Nox love me? Which is like really shitty for Amaris to be like outside listening. And Tanith's like, it's okay if you aren't ready to kick your vice. Some people turn to drink, others to poppy dens. I don't know. Alexa, when were opium dens created?
This might answer your question. In the 19th century.
Okay, so I'll let it slide. I won't say it's anachronistic because maybe poppy dens was a thing, but it doesn't, I don't know. The use of the word den is what's throwing me. Like, there were establishments where people were doing stuff with poppy. Okay. I also don't really understand, like, if they're not in contact with the other with the other countries at all because of the curse, how are they getting chocolate to make hot chocolate? Like, it's cold there. How are they growing like cocoa beans? I don't know. Doesn't make, like, what is the situation with the exports and imports here? This is stuff that you do need to think about if you're writing a fantasy, because readers like me are going to start asking questions about it. I have a work in progress that it will never see the light of day outside of my friends, but one of the things I really like doing is like charting out the imports and exports. I get a lot of joy out of creating like little charts of like how things get where and everything. And the world I created is a barter system. There's no money, so I really like exchange rates of like how much X equals how much Y. It's a lot of fun. But it doesn't actually translate into word count, so my word count is not very high. But my ideas are, I mean, all in my head and you're never gonna see them, so who cares? And then Amaris, who didn't exactly forgive Yaslin, it says Amaris hadn't thought she'd been overly cruel, nor has she made efforts towards forgiveness. Not only has she blamed Yaslin for Ceres's capture, yet because she is to blame. She did lead to you getting captured by Ceres and your dad getting his head cut off. That is something that she is responsible for. Not only had she blamed Yaslin, it should say not only was she responsible for, because she is, not only has she blamed Yaslin for Ceres's capture, but for Odorin's death and for the blood of Roscott's military, but for also being the distraction that stood between Nox and the forgiveness needed for them to work through their issues. She is in fact responsible for all of that except the last part. Like, that last part is on you and Nox. The rest of it, Yaslin is in fact responsible for and does need to work to make actual amends, not just say sorry. You need to put that into action. But we're not going to, because we're just supposed to like Yaslin. A tug of empathy demanded her to put herself in the winged fae's shoes. Your dad's dead. Roscott's army is decimated. Put yourself in her shoes, but also like have her make amends. And fucking Nox is not her making amends. They're talking in the war room and they're like, we need intelligence, we need reinforcements, we need a plan more articulate than go in and get them. Okay, so get more intelligence. Also, like, why are you not roping in the other countries into this? Why not send a message to Tarkani or the Etal Isles? Or do you really have send a message to the university. You have some people there that you know. Like, why not try to rally the other people existing in this world? It's really confusing. And Ash is like, we only need manpower. You're really stupid. No, you don't. And it says, they have no knowledge of an heir, even a bastard claimed to the throne. No offense, Nox. And Amara says, why do you think the void will be well received? Fairhold will descend into anarchy, talking about when they kill Moirae. And I'm confused, like, so won't the people be like, all right, where's the prince? Like, we have to look for the prince. Like, sure, the prince is not going to be there if Moirae is not alive, but how would they prove that he was an illusion? They're going to be looking for him. So it won't be so much a void of power as it will be this already established heir. They're going to be looking for him. So, like, that's an issue that y'all need to contend with, that you know exists. And Yasmin's like, if you're suggesting that we disseminate information of Nox's existence before killing Moirae, that would take the kind of time and presence in Fairhold that we just don't have. None of us can speak or be understood south of the border. Why can't you send messages? Like, why can't you send messages? Y'all don't have ravens? Y'all don't have, like, owls, horses, telegram? You've got psychology and HIPAA. Why don't you have telegrams? It says, Moirae is stirring the south now. Soulgrave is descending now. The timing may not be convenient. If you know Moirae is stirring the south, then why don't you reach out to other countries? Offer alliances. Tell them what's going on. Tell them about the curse. Tarkani, like, it hasn't said whether or not Tarkani is a people that they are affiliated with or have, like, they could talk about, like, hey, you know, we could import-export, we could work together. Why aren't we doing that? Again, y'all can't send a fucking bird. And Nox is still not really willing to take up her role as queen. It says, having Ceres as a father doesn't qualify me to make this kind of call. After Gadriel asks, like, with all this information, what do you want to do? And I'm like, how are you so incompetent? How are you this incompetent? You are hundreds of years old and you are asking a 23-year-old what she wants to do instead of, you called yourself her advisor. Why don't you just tell her what you think is best based on what you've seen over the last several hundred years you've been alive? But then that would make it look like Gadriel's smarter than Nox, and that's not what we're being set up for. Not to mention, it's super weird that Nox isn't, like, adding in ideas considering she made whole ass plots to get Amaris back. She says, your hope to get the support of Fairhold Fairhold is worthless while the curse at the border exists. Again, why can't we send messages to other countries or to the university? Do we really have no allies in Fairhold? I mean, doesn't the matron at the orphanage owe Knox for being such a shithead? Couldn't they, you know, send her a message? Also, Knox literally has a pen that writes directly to the matron. Couldn't they rope her into this that way? Why aren't we using the fucking pen that writes directly to the matron? Why is the matron not being used as a spy? She owes Knox and Amaris for being shit. They could just threaten her. Write her a note. You have the pen, but the pen does not come up until the very fucking end of the book. Why? You had a resource. Why didn't you use it? It says your hope to get the support of Fairhold is worthless while the curse at the border exists. Again, then use the fucking pen. We can't spread any campaign of Roscott's good intent or of Daphne having an heir while everyone who crosses the border is seen as a Gymni. Killing Moira is the only reasonable priority, and Ash is right on that. You're also correct in that we lack the key intelligence for effective tactical infiltration. Your spies should be gathering information on Moira's routine within Obey. Wait, so you already have spies? So why can't you do tactical infiltration then? Why can't you get that information to your spies? Okay. Your spies should be gathering information on Moira's routine within Obate, her security, and also whatever spelled objects and wards she might possess. On top of that, open war is foolish with or without threat of Soulgrave. If we expose ourselves like Ceres's men in the gully, they're merely sitting ducks for Soulgrave's zealots to strike. Sneaking in is our best bet at eliminating Moira and keeping ourselves safe. We have every reason to believe her curse will die with her. Ceres may have been mad, but he was right to bring Amaris south. She should lead the assassination effort. It is why she was born. Once the curse is broken, we can move forward with the humanitarian efforts for Fairhold. But you already have options. You just said it. You just said that you have spies in Fairhold. Why are you not utilizing them to get some of this shit done? If you're already using them to figure out stuff about Moira, then why not have them also get a message to the university? Also, contact the matron. Like, I am so confused why these things are not being utilized. Talks about Knox and Amaris. She's reading a book about harpies and it like dumps a bunch of her information about harpies that I thought would be relevant and then it never was. And then Knox gives her the apple. She says, it's Yggdrasil's apple from the Temple of the All-Mother. Notice that it says the Temple of the All-Mother, not a Temple of the All-Mother or the Temple of the All-Mother in Fairhold, implying that there are other temples as Tanith did. I think you should eat of it. It showed me your birth and gave me a lot of information I needed in order to understand the world and my place in it, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that this was going to go somewhere, and it turns out Amaris just shows up in the next scene. He's like, well, I ate from the apple and nothing happened. That's it. Okay, sure. Weird as fuck. Oh, another thing. Knox figures out that she has dream walking powers. I don't understand why she didn't start dream walking into the dreams of people that she knew in Fairhold. Like, could she train on that? Like, could she dream walk? Like, Ceres was able to do that and she got it from him. Couldn't she dream walk into the dreams of like the matron? Or does she only dream walk into into Amaris's dreams because she's in love with her? It's just another way that I feel like we could have, you know, like gotten information to our allies and instead like we just didn't utilize it. Okay, so next we are 42% through this book and they are just now starting to make ideas. We are months and months after they have lost their forces and their king is dead. So they've had time to like recuperate and make ideas, and just now she's saying, you think we might be able to create like a magical antidote or a shield? We have plenty of objects, magical objects, for dampening and neutralizing that usually work by containing. Why couldn't we make one that deflected rather than entrapped? Or if a manufacturer could collaborate with Amaris and give her gift to rightly see, we may have an untapped resource. And Gadriel's like, I have never thought of such a thing before. How have you have brilliant manufacturers and you've never thought to utilize them for war that you're in? How? Are you just like empty up here? I'll send word and have several of our best manufacturers at the castle by this evening. There's no reason for any of the curse's specificities to remain secret, so it couldn't hurt to put all hands on deck. In fact, this may be a clever grassroots way to begin to get word out regarding Daphne as Ceres's lover and you as their child. That's not what grassroots means. Grassroots is common people working together. Your best manufacturers is not a grassroots effort. And also, it just feels so fucking weird to say that. I mean, you should have just said an effective way. Like, if you really were concerned about grassroots efforts, why aren't you dealing more with the common people? Didn't y'all say that Ceres fucked up a bunch of shit? What does that mean for the common people of Rascot? It says, the inner circle was gathered in the war room to discuss Gadriel's findings. He explained Nox's idea. Everyone seemed to buzz with a bit of excitement at the possibility. The manufacturers hadn't sounded particularly confident that they'd be able to accomplish blah blah blah. And I'm like, but there's an entire shop of like magical stuff. Nox is given a ribbon that keeps like protects her from getting stabbed or anything. I'm just not sure like why we don't already have a bunch of objects that keep people from being stabbed if they're able to be created in the first place. Like, is there does it take a lot of magic? Is there only like a finite amount of that resource that creates that? I don't know. Nox is like, have we made any progress with Tanith? And Yaslin's like, she's been quite lovely. Ah, yes, lovely. She's lovely to the pure-blooded fae, and whatever Amaris is, you mean? Says Ash, who's like salty that Tanith is mean to him because he's half fae. And Yaslin says, we can't all be perfect. She murdered a bunch of people, Yaslin. The fuck is wrong with you? And it says, see what she'll tell you about their abilities. If she came on a skiff of 5, then we may have 4 other zealots running loose around the continent. I doubt we can handle another Vaklish invasion. How are you just now? What data has Tanith been giving you? How did you not think to ask that sooner? Why did we not already ask? You had to be told to ask that? That's a pretty standard question. Oh, there's 4 others of you? Where are they? Nox decides to end her hate fucking campaign with Yaslin. Said, this was so much more fun when we hated each other, wasn't it? And Yaslin's like, are you trying to tell me you don't hate me anymore? Nox is like, I guess so. Who would have thought? And without that mutual hate, it just doesn't feel right. Cool. Also, it says, while the company had been passionate and pleasurable, life-giving for months, and I was like, hold on. Months? You've been talking to Tanith for months? And you have still not thought to ask her about those other 4 people running around the continent? Soulgrave is not coming for their missing cult people? What was the plan? And also, I just want to point out that Tanith specifically said, I came the same way that many came before me and many will after. What does that mean? Does that mean there are other people from Soulgrave running around? How does nobody know this? It said in the book, the same book, no one has seen anyone from Soulgrave. No one alive. Things are not adding up. Then gets really upset. Just like a culmination of all of these like things that have been happening. How her and Mars still have not worked it out, which I feel like at this point they really could have, but we're like saving that for the end, you know, to try to make like an emotional impact, but feels kind of contrived. Anyways, it said she cried until she ran out of water. So she cried until like her glass was empty or her entire body had no water in it. Come on now. And then it says, the longer she cried, the more certain she was that if the night claimed her, she would have no desire to wake up in the morning. If the night claimed her, then she couldn't wake up in the morning, whether she desired to or not. Come on. Chapter 20, Nox was dreaming. There was a weightless quality to the air, as if each sip sent her closer to the stars.
What does it mean?
She's sipping the air? Alright. She's dreaming, but she sees Amaris in her dream, and they're at Reeve. And she's like, this is Reeve. I always wanted, basically like the Witcher area. I always wanted you to see it. I thought of you all the time while I was here. Wandering aimlessly through the keep, Nox did her best to soak everything in, but every new sight caused the confusion within her brain to swell. She racked her brain for points of reference. She tried to remember a single conversation wherein Ash or Malik had described the Reeve. She wondered if there had been pictures in books or sketches on parchments, but nothing comes to mind. Puzzlement began to feel more like unease as they wandered down halls, blah blah blah. These are your memories. A high-pitched ring cut through Nox. It was not a question. So she figures out that she is walking in Amaris's dream by saying, but I've never been to Reeve before. Okay, but you could just make up you don't know for sure that this is the version of Reeve. You would have to, you could have just made up your subconscious mind could be making up its own version. So how do you know you're in a dream? What? what? She wakes up, Zakai's there, and he says, I received an urgent raven from our outpost in Yeligen. I think we found Solgrave's forces. And I just want to point out that they do in fact have ravens then. So you do. So you could send them to people in Fairhold then. Okay, great. You're just not sending them? Okay. So they allowed Tanith into the war room meeting about this, and it said, Roscott has allowed a mixed blood Fae to take the throne where a pure Fae king sat only days before, which is a weird way of saying that considering like that he died months ago, but okay. And it says that basically Yeligen was attacked by these forces, but there's no bodies. It's a ghost town. And Nox is like, we need the Reavers, and Amars is like, we have a Reaver, it's me. Yeligen is built around a lake, and the Naki within the lake must have taken the people and dragged them underwater. And they're debating like whether or not the Naki are even real. The Reavers also said that the Vaklish weren't supposed to be real either. But you said that they came from the oases of Tarkani. What do you mean? You didn't say they were a myth before. You said that they came from the oases of Tarkani. That's what it said. What the fuck? And the people who were from Roscott's station in Yeligen were able to fly away. And Tanith is like, precisely. Any Fae would have been able to stop or escape the attack. Those of pure magical blood are at no risk. How could you do this? To be clear, I don't mean morally, since now is not the time to debate your fucked up religion. In the most technical sense, how could a Fae bind so many creatures to themselves and coordinate such an attack? And Tanith is like, I don't want to speak with it in the room, talking about Nox. So she refers to anyone who's not pure blood Fae as it or as mongrels. I just want to point that out, right? Okay, so they're talking to her and she says, I'm prepared to die for my beliefs, as are all of us. Zake says, Tanith, what would you tell a true believer on how one might summon such powers so as to purify the land? She says, all Fae are born with inherent power. Shall we think of it like water? And she talks about how she has electricity powers. I learned how to make my energy into the loveliest of shapes. Have you ever seen a lightning bolt shaped like a rose? No, but I kind of want to. So she describes all of their powers as like a spring underwater. And she's like, we need magical purity. This is what hundreds of years of living with humans will do. And this is honestly kind of confusing, but they're just saying basically like how they access the power. And she talks about Nox and says, the halfling is a thief who's built an aqueduct to redirect water for another field. After a few generations of diluting and sullying, they simply identify as humans who have the small magics. We've heard these humans called witches. Isn't that sickening? So that's what witches are in this world? Why didn't we establish that fucking forever ago? But honestly, this kind of feels like it gets retconned because in the end, Moirae calls Amaris a witch. She doesn't have small magics. She has very large magics. And then she never actually explains really how, in a way that I understood, how the rest of her cohorts are binding demons to themselves and making them attack humans and half-fae. I don't really understand. And then it says, in the river of seasick time that followed, someone had fetched Nox, Ash, and Malik. And I'm like, in the river of seasick time? We're not even in water.
What does it mean?
They tell Nox that her father could dreamwalk, and it's a gift that runs through her family, though it doesn't surface in everyone. Of course it surfaced in Nox, though. The special. I think that's why when Amaris ate the fruit, she saw nothing. For you, it was a tether directly for you to be able to walk into the tree's memories in your dreams. So if she sends the apple to somebody in Fairhold, then could she dreamwalk? What if we cut up the entire apple and disperse it throughout Fairhold? Could she dreamwalk in everybody's dreams? But she was able to connect to Amaris's dreams previously before Amaris even ate the apple, so I don't know. It talks about her and Malik and how they have a romance going, but they can't really have sex because she's a succubus, so they basically just hang out and, I don't know, eat hot chocolate or whatever. It says, if the documents of their summit are to be believed, the Desert Kingdom desires only separation and sovereignty. Okay, then how are we, they're a desert. How are they, what are they growing and how are, they're self-sustaining? How? Though if Solgrave succeeds in toppling Fairhold and Roscott, Tarkani is sure to follow. And what of the Isles, the Etel Isles? What of them indeed? Okay, why not send some ravens? Y'all said you have them. Talks about Tanith again, saying Tanith could be an incredible asset, but right now she's only talking to us under the conditions of her religious outlook. I think if she spent enough time with someone of mixed heritage, pure exposure therapy would force her to see your humanity. Alexa, when was exposure therapy invented?
From verywellhealth.com. Throughout the late 1970s and early 80s, clinical psychology professor Edna Foa and colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania fine-tuned ERP techniques and gave exposure and response prevention its name.
Yeah, so And of course they send Ash to do this. Why? Because Ash is single. That's it, honestly. Ash is single. Malik is a human. I mean, he could make Tanith really disgusted. Nox could do it, but instead they send Ash, even though previously they said that they didn't want to send a man to do this. They could hire somebody new, recruit people. Don't they already need to recruit people? The only reason that we have Ash doing this is because it opens the door for a romance, which is not what we should be doing with somebody who is a religious zealot. We should not be prioritizing her getting a romance before we prioritize her on page deconstructing those beliefs and making amends. When you write religious bigotry, you really have to be careful, and you really have to, you can't half-ass it. And this just feels like we jumped right into not deconstructing those beliefs and using a romance. And so one of my patrons sent me this book, Rising Out of Hatred by Eli Saslow, which is the story of documenting what happened with Derek Black. Derek Black is the son of the guy who created Stormfront, which is like the largest online racist community. That's his dad who created that. And he's the godson of David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the KKK. And this entire book is Saslow documenting Black unlearning all of that, confronting the damage that he had done. And I wish that we had really any time spent with Tanith doing that. That could have been the majority of this book, and I would have fucking loved that. But instead, we just completely skirted around the accountability portion, and I can't understand why. That's so important. When you grow up in fundamentalism, when you grow up in religious cults, you are still responsible for the damage that you cause. And just because somebody, you get exposure therapy to somebody, and then you end up falling in love with them, as Tanith does with Ash, does not mean that you are redeemed. You still fucked up so tremendously. I can't express how disappointing it was to have Tanith go from this really almost creepy person in a dungeon cell alluding to certain things, only to us never learn any of that shit, and for her to fall in love with Ash and sleep with him and be happy that she's a prisoner. I wish that we had gone the Rising Out of Hatred route because we never get those conversations with Ash. We just have him protecting her until she likes him. Come on. That's not exposure therapy. And also, exposure therapy is an anachronism. Then it says that Nox says, Moire is a witch. Are you implying that the Southern Queen is Fae? And Zakai says, witch is just a word. I don't think she's Fae, but her Fae lineage may be closer to her than the Fairhold royal family she has ever led on. This would also help us understand why the Tree of Life was so receptive to Daphne's power. If she possessed access to the magic as well, as Tanith called it, she could have tapped into whatever stream of power ran between her and Yggdrasil. I just don't understand how Tanith's sect of the religion does not recognize the Tree of Life, especially if she knows that Amaris is a half goddess and was born because of the tree, and that the goddess impregnated a priestess at that temple, the temple. I'm at 49% of the way through, and I've been filming for hours. I don't want to continue and have a 4-hour video to edit because my editing software literally can't handle that. So I'm gonna have to break this into 2 parts. I wasn't planning on doing that, but this is where we're at because I really feel like this is such a good case study in how not to write fantasy, particularly when you're at your 3rd book, but also when you are writing religious cults and cult members into a book. This is a really good case study on how not to do that. So if you are writing a cult member that you're trying to deprogram, I would really recommend that you look into this book and not use a romance to bypass accountability to redeem your character. So that's where we're gonna leave off today. I am all done filming. I will make a part 2 for this video. Again, I was not planning on doing that, and I don't want to because I hate having to do videos in parts, as you all know, but this has gone on very long. I wasn't expecting it to go on this long, but again, I have so much to say. I hope this was helpful. If this was helpful for any writers out there, please let me know down below. And if you have any questions for me, I guess, as a writer, for the perspective of what a reader likes to see, leave them down below. If you made it this far, thank you. I'm so sorry that this is so long. I hate when videos drag on this long. All right, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you're interested in part 2 so that I can tell you how this book, how this plot continues and how the book ends, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye. Hello, it's me. Oh my god. I have to stop putting my bun inside. Wow, okay. Oh, wow, she really goes. Okay, sure. All right. Well, this is Oh my god. This is the most trash can that Trash Can Rachel can get. Hi, it's me, Trash Can Rachel, and I'm here to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons in the most awkward fucking way possible. I'm so sorry. And those patrons are Alexander, Allie Magpie, Ashley, Bubble Tea, Cami, Chris, Claire, Des Roberts, DJ Raptopus, Aaron, Eric, Aror, Jack and Jill, John E, Casey McKenzie, Kate W, Caitlin, Kelly K, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lex, Molly, Alice, Peggy Lou, Rain, Reese, Samar, Scarlett, Shiny, and SMK. Thank you so much for being a friend and staying with me as I am this. Before I go, I also have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are AM Angel, Alicia, Amanda, Andy, Angelica, Anita, Artie the Ninth, Ashley H, Aubrey P, Ava, BB, Beck, Blythe, Bookish Brain Rot, Bookmark Chronicles, Bree, Brian, Caitlin, Harlan, Catherine, Kathy, Chris, CJ, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Corey, Deborah, Diet Goth, Dorothea, Evie, Elise, Ember, Emily A, Emily L, Emma O A, Aaron, Grace, Hannah C, Hannah T, Harpy Kuro, Hello There Darling, India Inks, JM Tennant, Jackal All Trades, Jay's on Olympus, JT, Jen with 2 N's, Jennifer T, Jenny G, Jillian, Jules, Kaylee, Kat, Katie, Katya, Kayala, Kendra, Kylie, Laughing Cat Dog, Lauren B, Library of Scars, Lisa, Lou, Luna Moth, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Marcella, Marquita, Maz, Malara, Meow Meow, James, Nat, Natalie, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Nyan Binary, Paige E, Paige P, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Pixel Stars, Purathion, Rachel B, Rat Sarah, Reba, Rebecca, Ren, Robin, Rosie, Rowan, Other Rowan, Sikoria, Sadie, Samantha, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shanae, Shannon, Shayna, Sean, Sierra, Stephanie, Talia, Real Dogs, Tina, Toast, Trash Can Teddy, Tito Phoenix, Valentine, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being a friend.